Fernand Seref Foreman. He is the only nephew of the emperor and the commander of the imperial army in the last war. He is no longer the boy from Julia's memories, but a grown man whose name is the loudest name in the empire after the war. And this is Julia Elidis. The girl is 22 years old. They met for the first time 9 years ago when she was 13. It happened something like this. The Marquis's wife, who did not recognize her as her daughter, lost her temper once again and locked the girl in an empty closet. It was terribly humiliating. But Julia was very little then and didn't know how to stand up for herself, simply because she was too kind, even to those who didn't deserve it. And then he, Fernand, came up to her. With his actions, the guy made her fall in love with him at first sight, because he acted like a real man. In her eyes, he looked like a hero. And when the guy asked why she was crying, Julia felt for the first time in a long time that someone needed her. And he was also the first person to show that someone's touch could be so warm and pleasant. They went out to sit on the balcony. She was very embarrassed then, and so was he. So it was difficult to start a conversation. The girl didn't know him yet. She asked if she could ask a question, and she was also very worried because she was afraid that he might not be as good as she thought he was. Julia asked him what his name was, and he remembered that he had never introduced himself to her and even apologized for it. Then the guy answered that his name was Fernand, to which she replied that it was a very beautiful name and that it suited him very well. And after that, instead of asking her name, he asked her why she thought he hadn't asked her the same question. The girl said that she had no idea, and he explained that if fate ever brought them together, then he would definitely ask her name, because it would be more interesting. This was their last conversation. Many years have passed since then. During this time, a lot has changed, and they themselves too. Fernand not only became a war hero, but also received lands in the northern Kaiser, as well as the title of Duke. In the end, that noble boy from the distant past became her fiancé, and who would have thought? Naturally, the girl thought it was fate and was so happy that she would marry him. But their life together turned out to be not as colorful as she imagined it to be. It's their most ordinary day. Julia came to him, and he, with his trademark cold look, asks what she's doing here, instead of smiling, giving her some kind of compliment or asking how she's doing. In such a relationship, the girl could not remain happy and cheerful. But with all this, she still tries to be the best version of herself for him and a convenient wife. She is the only one of them who can ask how he feels or come to talk in the morning, as it should be in a normal relationship. She told him that she came to say hello, but he doesn't understand what she's trying to achieve by doing this. Fernand seems to see a catch in all her actions. Julia is already tired of repeating that she just wants to be near him and it shouldn't mean anything. But since he was already asking, she replied that she didn't need anything from him. She just came to look at him as a wife. And he says, like this, that she allegedly can't wait to feel like a mistress. But this is not at all what she would like to hear from him. Looks at him as if in a couple more days she would just finally be convinced that becoming his wife was a mistake. Meanwhile, he says that if she wants something, then go ahead, come in. She can remodel the castle. She can buy jewelry or organize receptions. He absolutely doesn't care. With each day, with each word he says, she doesn't have the strength to explain or prove anything, because it's obvious that it's pointless. Julia hoped that he would somehow politely hint that he wanted to be alone. But her husband, as usual, said it straight out as it is. He says that he would not like to see her in the morning, so he asked her not to do this again. His impenetrable face clearly made it clear. Don't hope for anything. This man will never change, at least in relation to her. The lady is surprised at herself how she still has the desire to fight for this relationship, which has long since deteriorated. Even from the outside, it is clear that there was not and never will be a grain of feeling and warmth between them, which disappeared in the first week as soon as they got married. After the wedding, she and Fernand hardly exchanged a couple of phrases. He was always busy, and in general he was not talkative. She recognized him as a completely different person. He seemed not to be the nice guy she wanted to admire with his every look and word. Julia was constantly looking for the reason in herself, and did not notice how she began to focus too much on him, and forgot about herself. She stopped enjoying everything that surrounds her. She no longer cares how she looks, what she eats. She is oppressed by the only thought that her husband, with whom they should be as one, avoids her and says in plain text that he does not need her. While she was thinking about this, she didn't notice how the maid came up to tell her something. She said that Marquise Elidis was waiting for the lady in the reception room, but from her reaction it was clear that she was far from happy about it. The girl thanked him and promised that she would come soon because she needed to do something and get ready. She hasn't seen her father for a long time and already more or less understands what he wants to ask her. She just walked into his office. Clayton indignantly asked where her husband was. Weren't they married? Because lately he hasn't been seen anywhere, and especially not together. She explains to him that he has too much to do at work, and she hides her eyes so that he doesn't see that she herself has no idea where or what's wrong with Fernand. Lucky that her father is not a very attentive person. He just heard her and did not check anything. Then he thought that since the guy was so busy, they probably didn't spend enough time together, so he decided to give them something. It is useful for men to drink it to maintain strength, but he knows from his own experience that if he were given it, he would at least be offended and would not even touch it, because it looks like humiliation. The man advises to simply add it somewhere to food or drink, but so that it is not noticeable. The main thing is not to sprinkle too much because the opposite effect may appear, and the girl doesn't even know how to react to this. She understands perfectly well that nothing can help them anymore. It's not that her husband has little strength. He doesn't relate to her at all and apparently didn't love her from the first day of marriage. Although her father didn't say this, she herself realized that it seemed like he thought that Fernand had a mistress. Although after such thoughts, Julia herself began to wonder if this was really the case. She is a little offended to realize that her father really thinks that this could happen, although she herself understands it. A young guy can't not have any kind of relationship on the side, considering that he has no intimacy with his wife. Finally, the man reminded her that he had always told her and would continue to tell her for a long time. A child is what will make their marriage real. After that, he said that she needs to know her place and be able to act, and it is also advisable not to waste time. Then he asked if she understood everything, as if he insisted that his daughter act this way and not otherwise, as if he knew better how she should act. Then he asked if she could handle it or not, and she was in a stupor that prevented her from thinking adequately and talking to anyone. If she at least ate her fill, that it would help somehow. But she doesn't need intimacy with a person who is not interested in it in principle. If they had problems with a lack of strength or something like that, that's one thing. But she sees that he simply doesn't love her, and here any supplements are powerless. Meanwhile, she returned to her room. While no one was looking, she decided to hide that jar because you never know who might come to her unexpectedly. She has just the right box. It's just a pity that it doesn't have a special lock so that even if someone wanted to, they wouldn't be able to see what's in there. She keeps repeating her father's phrase in her head that she should give birth to her husband's child, but if she does, she will be even more attached to him. She would like that without all these ideas and additives in food. They would be fine, like other people. But if she wants to achieve love, she will have to follow her father's advice. But before that, it is important to think everything through. Well, so that later she does not come to the realization that if there is no mutual love, then there is no point in achieving it. And she also feels very awkward that her father is starting to help her with these problems because they shouldn't have been there in the first place. And she is also scared by the fact that she does not fully know what this potion is. At the very least, she is afraid of poisoning her husband, because it is possible that it may not be exactly what her father says. Something about him makes her wary. All this mystery, secrecy, she is terribly tired of it. She simply has no strength for anything anymore. In any case, before adding this to a person's food, she will definitely call a doctor and check if the contents of this jar are safe. Even now, when she has to figure this out on her own, she feels lonely and like she's the only one who needs it. It's already evening. Today there's an incredibly beautiful sunset. But even this doesn't make me happy, and neither does anything else. Fernand, as usual, works late. Usually he doesn't have any meetings in the evening, but today his wife's father, whom he also hasn't seen for a long time, unexpectedly decided to come to him. Apparently the man missed him so much that he decided to come and see him. But the guy also immediately made it clear to him that he was very busy, so he asked him to be brief. The man was not as shy as his daughter. He laughed slightly and began to take something out of his jacket. Then he said that he understood perfectly well that he was a very busy young man, but he advised not to treat the envoy from His Majesty himself so coldly. The guy didn't even look him in the eye. He just whispered that sending a decrepit marquis across half the empire for the sake of one letter was somehow inappropriate. And he also admitted that in the role of a servant, a man looks very harmonious. It sounded like advice to change profession. This sounded very unpleasant. The man tried his best to restrain himself and after some time answered him. But what can you do, since the only nephew of His Majesty is in no hurry to demonstrate his loyalty to the throne, so you have to use such an old man to somehow restore order. This also sounded a little unpleasant for Fernand, but who else would tell him such a thing except him? It was very timely and correct. Suddenly he will explain something now. Or maybe he will just feel ashamed. The guy replied that the marriage itself with the Marquis's daughter was already more than enough of a display of devotion on his part. And after that he asked the Marquis what else he should do, so that His Majesty would finally be satisfied. The man says that no one knows, but if he has a child with his daughter as soon as possible and produces an heir, His Majesty may recognize his loyalty, and then everyone will certainly be happy. And when this happens, he will be able to go somewhere far away with his daughter, on vacation. After which the man asked if this was not a wonderful reason to get rid of the annoying attention of His Majesty, because in his place, he would have done the same. It turns out that the man is offering him to give up the title as soon as possible. But the guy has some thoughts on this matter. As soon as he resigns, he will immediately dissolve the Supreme Council and begin to direct the heir as it suits him. Meanwhile, the man suggests that he think carefully about his words. And after that, he also explains that he is not suggesting that some outside scoundrel be made the heir. We are talking about transferring the title to his own son. And this is very fair, and in the end, everyone will be happy. The guy says that since His Majesty really insists on this, he cannot disobey and in principle agrees with this proposal. And then the most interesting thing began. Only the man was happy. Fernand says that the most important thing is that the heir has imperial blood, and in principle it doesn't matter who his mother will be. But these words already alarmed the man seriously. He couldn't even imagine that he would hear such a thing during this conversation. He started to get very indignant, asking what he was saying and whether he understood correctly that the guy was going to have a child somewhere on the side, without the participation of his daughter, to which Fernand replied that no matter how you look at it, he would not be able to conceive a child with his daughter, because every time he looks at her, he sees his face, and any desire to get closer to her immediately dies in him. The man doesn't even know what to say to this. He simply has no words, only emotions. The guy meanwhile started to leave and hint that this conversation was over, and he didn't want to hear anything more about it. He leaves calmly, the servants see him off, and Julia's father is not going to let him go just like that because he is not at all happy with the outcome of the conversation. He shouted at the whole office, what is he allowing himself to do? How does he even have the shame to say such a thing? And even looking straight into his eyes. Even the servants were a little scared. They thought that something was about to happen. But for now, the master just walks straight as if nothing was happening. The man is not going to leave this situation just like that. He hit the table with his fist hard, and even if the guy just leaves, it won't end there. He started calling him all sorts of names. At first he tried to keep his mouth shut, but it was impossible. Then he said very quietly, let's see how long this complacency lasts for you, and how quickly justice will overtake you and everyone around you. It turns out that he was in a hurry for lunch. Yesterday, the guy had a very weak dinner, so now he is very hungry and is impatiently waiting for some food. Usually people at the table don't do anything like that, but he can't do it without his documents even now. And then they announce that Her Highness has arrived, the door opens, his beautiful wife comes in, and he doesn't even look in her direction. It's as if he's deliberately showing with his whole appearance that he doesn't care about her, no matter what she looks like. She already understands this, that's why she came in with a sad face. She herself doesn't remember the last time she smiled, so it's not surprising. She calmly sat down at the table, not even trying to talk to him, because after the last conversation she had no desire to do so. Julia promised herself that until he spoke to her himself, she wouldn't even greet him. I wonder how long she could hold out like this. Because she's the only one of them who needs communication, and for him, silence is like a gift from her side. The guy, as usual, in his repertoire, very busy, so much so that he didn't even notice at what point food appeared on the table. Meanwhile, the assistant offered to pour the lady some wine, and the girl did not refuse because she just needed to relieve stress. Suddenly, a miracle happened. Her husband spoke to her, but, as could be expected, strictly on business, simply to inform her that he was going to go to the capital soon for an audience with His Majesties. And after that, he said that she would go with him. Only it was not a question, but a statement. Supposedly, he was not interested in whether she wanted it or not. At first, the lady didn't even understand what it meant. She was calmly eating her dish, and then she understood what it meant. She almost choked, threw her fork away, and asked if this was really the first time she would go somewhere with him, as she had long dreamed of. This is very good news for her, but it is not clear from him that it is mutual. He did not even answer her. She's sitting there all happy, and he's reading the newspaper and hasn't even noticed it, but the way his wife smiles is something wonderful. And then suddenly, Fernand remembered the words of her father, since the only nephew of His Majesty is in no hurry to demonstrate loyalty to the throne. So they have to use such an old man to somehow restore order. The boy wondered if it wasn't enough that he had been on the brink of death for many years since he was 17, in order to prove his loyalty. He even married the daughter of the Marquis of Elodie, the Emperor's watchdog, a woman he had never seen before and did not desire. Now it's clear why they have such a relationship. He got married only to show something to someone. Meanwhile, the girl noticed that he hadn't eaten anything and was already getting up from the table, so she asked what happened, since she had been silent and hadn't even looked at him. He simply replied that he would leave first, and she didn't understand what that meant. But she agreed anyway. Then she wished him a safe journey, as if she thought he would say something to her about it. Something impossible. Julia remembered that she had promised not to talk to him again, regretted that she had done this, and was slightly upset. She even lost her appetite. Food no longer looks as attractive as before she said goodbye to him. The chef tried hard today. He wanted to surprise them, but in the end no one really tried anything. It's good that he didn't see it. Then she left the table. Julia understands that at night she will most likely want to have a snack, but still, she couldn't force herself to eat anything. Some time passed. They were already together in the Imperial Palace, and of course they came here separately. First he arrived, waited for her, and then Julia. And then they went up to the second floor together. As expected, they greeted His Majesty and Her Majesty and said how glad they were to see them. It's so luxurious inside that even Fernand couldn't help but say that it was a pleasure to be here. This is the Emperor of the Empire, Edward Foreman, and next to him is his wife, the Empress of the Empire, Rosalind Foreman. And in the meantime, the guy doesn't even let his wife say a word. He does it on purpose so that she doesn't say anything unnecessary and doesn't disgrace him. The Emperor asked if the guy and his lady were tired from the journey and suggested they rest a little. Then he turned to the girl and said that the last time he saw her was at a wedding, and that supposedly since then, she had only become more beautiful. Of course, she is very happy to hear this from His Majesty, but she still can't smile. She only answered him that if it were not for his care, she would not live in prosperity, for which she would remain grateful until the end of her life. It is clear that the man is more inclined to talk to the lady than to her husband, because it is somehow much easier with her. He didn't hide it. He said that he didn't envy her regarding her husband's character, because he knew from his own experience how hard it was to deal with him, not to mention living together. It was as if he wanted to tease him with this, but it was clear that he absolutely didn't care about it, no matter what they said about him. For the first time, Julia didn't think about what her husband was thinking right now. She was much more interested in understanding why she felt much more comfortable and calm communicating with the emperor than with anyone else. At the same time, she understands that he seems kind and sensitive, but only at first glance. And then she wondered why he constantly reminds her of her father. Then she quickly thought about something else. And here time passed so unnoticed that it was already evening outside. It started to get dark unnoticed, and there is also a very beautiful view everywhere, so looking out the window is a pleasure. As expected, the emperor arranged a whole feast. On the table there was everything, in his usual style. The entire room was filled with an incredible smell of food. Even from afar, you can see how fresh and tasty everything is. The emperor and his wife had already taken their seats, and after that they invited the guests to join in, because they were standing there as if they were afraid to join in without an invitation. The entire imperial family looks at the guests, and they are somehow as if something is wrong. From the outside, it is very clearly visible. The girl is afraid to say an extra word, and her husband, as usual, is taciturn, and that's how awkward silence occurs. Meanwhile, the man says how good it is to get together after so much time, and in fact, he has been waiting for this moment for a very long time. And his wife says that it's all thanks to the fact that a new person has appeared in the imperial family. His Majesty replied that this was absolutely true. It was a real stroke of luck that the Duke would take such a modest and well-behaved lady as his wife. She had grown up looking at her devoted father, and therefore, of course, her loyalty to the imperial family would also be deep. Then he drank his glass of wine down to the bottom in one go, as if he did not feel that there was very much drink in it. After this, Edward said that he had no doubt that the Grand Duchess would bring blessing not only to the family, but also to the state. He is talking about the future child of the newlyweds. The man hopes that for the good of the empire, they will hear some good news from them as soon as possible. The girl replied that she would try to do everything possible to live up to their expectations, and the emperor was glad to hear it. And then the most silent man of the company, Fernand, joins in and addresses his Majesty. And he says that he didn't even suspect that I was a wife he would like. And after that, a question was asked that seemed unnecessary. The guy asked why the emperor gave the woman he liked to him and didn't keep her for himself. This looks like the beginning of a conflict. It is already clear from Edward that he did not like it, and very much so. His Majesty's children know their father very well and understand that something serious is about to begin. You would think that the guy would stop throwing around such phrases at this point, but he only started offering that if he wished, he was ready to dissolve this marriage right now. After that, he asked his wife what she thought about it, and she started to shudder because it was unclear what was better here, to remain silent or to agree with him. She clutched her dress tightly so no one could see, trying to quickly formulate an answer that she hadn't even thought of yet. And then Rosalind decided to intervene. She told the lady that she could not answer and turned to the Duke to make it clear that the joke had crossed all acceptable boundaries. And then her husband supported her because he was of exactly the same opinion. He says that everything is correct. Such humor is out of place here, although he is sure that the Duke hardly wanted to insult him. And after that, he lightly hit the table with his fist and asked if he understood everything correctly or if he was still wrong. He looks at him with such a menacing look, as if trying to hint that one more wrong word and the guy will regret it. Fernand explained that he had simply been misunderstood and said that there was no way he could have said such a thing seriously. He just wants to demonstrate his commitment to the imperial family in accordance with his orders. With all this, the tension in the hall is very clearly felt, which was created absolutely on purpose. Everyone is already tense. The light atmosphere that was there at the very beginning has disappeared somewhere. No one could have imagined that the situation could change so abruptly. Now it is unknown how it will all end. It is impossible to guess anything. Although, what else could be expected from a conversation in which Fernand is present? When he is among people, it never happens that everything goes smoothly and calmly. Everyone was prepared for this. But they did not think that this time he would behave like this. Meanwhile, the next day came. People started coming to visit. There were more and more people with every second. As usual, there are all kinds of snacks and desserts everywhere for every taste and color. They look so beautiful that sometimes people don't even want to eat them. And also, literally almost every girl who meets Julia on the way does not pass by and always compliments her on her appearance. They all heard that she was a beautiful girl, but in life she turned out to be even better for them. Although these words mean nothing to her. She can hear 1,000 compliments, but until someone tells her, these words mean nothing to her. Of course she thanks for the attention, but she still has to force a smile. Every time they tell her something, she remembers that she has never heard anything like that from her husband. And she becomes very sad. So much so that sometimes she even wants to cry. And she is especially offended by his phrase yesterday, when he said that he can divorce her at any moment without any problems. Such words are so painful for any girl that it is impossible to express in words, especially if a person says it in front of everyone. Julia was standing calmly in one place when Suddenly, a woman ran up to her and began to rejoice at the meeting, and the girl only later realized who it was that approached her. At first, she was a little pleased that someone was reacting to her like that, but then she saw her stepmother and got upset again. She smiles at her and asks how she's doing as if she doesn't hate her with all her soul. Only it is impossible for the Marquis to be allowed to attend the tea party where all the nobles of the capital gather. Julia was so absent-minded that she completely missed this, and in the meantime, the woman pretends that she missed her and says that the mansion is very empty without her. But she is happy to see that their beloved daughter is healthy and that she is doing well. For other people, it sounded nice, but for Julia, it was absolutely disgusting. Only these two know that there is not a drop of sincerity in these words. And in the meantime, the woman says that she heard from His Majesty the Emperor that the day after tomorrow, except for dinner, she has no plans. So he suggests that she come with the Duke. But this is already the first sign that this could be a real trap, or some kind of vague plan of hers. She replied that she would try to ask him about it, but she could not guarantee that he would agree to it. Then the girl tried to explain in advance that her husband had a lot of things to do, so it was not a fact that he would find at least half an hour free. Only the woman apparently doesn't understand what the problem is, she asks. So what? As if she doesn't care. At this moment, everyone is watching and eavesdropping on them from the side, and Julia decided to say that due to the circumstances, she would probably come alone. It's much easier than going to her husband and hearing him tell her again that he doesn't want to see her. If she hears that, she'll just go crazy or fall into a deep depression. Something will definitely happen to her. For most parents, the birth of a child is a blessing from above. But for Julia, it seemed that this did not concern her, because for the Marquise, her existence was only a stain on her reputation and a weakness. She simply hated her. The whole time, the girl didn't hear a single good word from her. Only reproaches that she wouldn't achieve anything and that there was no meaning in her life. Every time Julia offended happy parents and their child, she was jealous and understood that she would never have this again. She could only watch this from the sidelines. Her emotions then were such that they simply cannot be described in words. Even instead of her name, she heard from her something like empty space and all that stuff. And she also said these words with such disgust, as if the girl had once done something so bad to her that she became her enemy. She constantly urged her to know her place, and not a single day went by without the girl apologizing for something. From the very first day of their meeting, the Marquise did not recognize her as her daughter. It was obvious. But then the girl could not even imagine what awaited her next. Living with this man in the same house? She was terribly disgusted to call her mom. Julia really felt like a nobody, and her stepmother tried very hard to make it so. While the woman was constantly walking with her friends and going shopping, the child was sitting in the room, cried and hated everything that was happening to him day after day, because it was not life, but a real hell. His Highness, although he does not love her, but he gives her a roof over her head. And this time he even invited her to the imperial palace, so she does not want to contradict him even for trifles, and doesn't want their already bad relationship to get even worse, although it would seem much worse than it is now. Suddenly the woman seemed to listen to her for the first time and said that, of course it was sad that she would not deign to devote time to them. But nothing can be done after all. It is a very tense season now, especially since it is enough that she saw the face of her beloved daughter. Julia hears these words. She literally freezes in one place because she doesn't even know how to react to this. Suddenly, the woman grabs her by the hand and says that she has a fan in her carriage that she brought for tea and offers to go get it right now. And she also said that she couldn't carry it alone. Julia was already tense because all this sounded somehow strange, even too much. The girl didn't resist. Even though she really didn't want to, she still went with her, and other people started discussing how everyone should have such warm relationships with their parents, not knowing that they only see a pretty picture, but inside everything is much sadder. They call them role models, but if they only knew what was behind all this, they wouldn't say so. Meanwhile, they just moved away to where there are no people. The woman immediately showed her true face, which is already much more familiar. She started pushing the girl with her feet, hit her with a sharp heel, and even laughed, as if she was happy that she managed to deceive her. At that moment, Julia didn't even have time to react. She hit herself hard, and also got confused because her stepmother, as usual, changed her behavior very abruptly, although at the same time, it was expected. Julia is angry with herself that she was too relaxed and did not foresee that everything would happen like this. Suddenly, the woman notices that they are not alone here. She saw two guys from the security and began to hope that they did not notice anything. Just in case they did see something, she specifically called Julia daughter and asked in a sweet voice why she was falling. Then she says, "She's already quite grown up, and you still need to keep an eye on yourself, but already, quickly, take your mother's hand and get up." The girl was so disgusted by these words that she would do anything now just to avoid hearing them. The stepmother gives her her hand, waiting for the lady to take it, but she does not do this and thus only angers this actress. Then the woman quietly told her to take her hand while she spoke nicely, and the girl at that moment was thinking about what she should do better. She was so confused that she still agreed to do as she suggested, although if she had a little more time, maybe she would have done it differently. Words cannot express how unpleasant it is for her to do this, but in this situation there is no other choice yet. After all, for now, it is better not to anger this person unnecessarily. The stepmother roughly grabs her hand, although since she is trying to look kind and caring, she could have taken it easier. While Yulia listens to her attentively, she tells her that she initially had no such option as not bringing him, so she advises her not to behave so impudently and to invite the Duke anyway. She also reminded that a lady must obediently fulfill her role. Simply do what she is told and not contradict. According to her, this is the only reason she is still alive. Julia is only useful because she can carry out orders as long as she has the health to do so. It's amazing to watch her change her facial expression and say such horrible things. But Julia isn't even surprised anymore. She's seen worse things in so many years, but sooner or later she'll have to deal with this because it can't go on like this any longer. Meanwhile, the next day came. The girl, as soon as she woke up, immediately climbed in and came to His Highness. But she was a little unlucky because he was not there. The butler noticed that she was waiting for a long time, and so that the wait would not be so tiring, he offered her chamomile tea, which is quite calming. She thanked him for this, and said that he was very timely, and then asked if he by any chance knew when His Highness would return. The guy says he can't say for sure, but the gentleman left early in the morning and should be arriving soon. That's all he can help her with. And meanwhile, the lady wondered whether she had the right to be here, because she had some doubts about it. One can only hope that he won't be angry that she came in without permission, because she wouldn't have been able to do it any other way. Julia remembered her stepmother's words. You didn't have the option of not bringing him, so don't act so impudent and invite him. The girl drank the first cup. They brought her a second one. Time is passing, and if someone doesn't show up soon, she'll just fall asleep here. Chamomile tea really does calm her down. She can barely restrain herself from lying down somewhere. Before, it seemed to her that waiting no longer tired her, but for some reason today it seemed especially long. Meanwhile, the Duke is talking to the Crown Prince over a cup of tea. He asks him to tell the truth. Why this time, on the day of the founding of the empire, did he entrust the protection of the capital to him and not to the guard? He just thought it would be like this. It turned out differently. The guy wants to make sure the prince didn't do it because he wanted to see him bend over backwards to protect the emperor. The prince answers him that Fernand is also part of the imperial family and he cannot entrust the safety of His Majesty to ordinary knights. After that, the guy just stood up, didn't say anything, and made it clear that he was going to leave. The prince finally told him that he would be grateful if he received a positive response to the proposal. Naturally, no one answered him. The prince was basically used to his behavior, but each time it goes beyond all bounds. The guy has such a bad character that even those who have known him for a long time still can't get used to it. Finally, the gentleman came home. Today he was a little late, so no one even knew approximately when to expect him. He walks down the corridor, and literally a few meters away there are two servants talking to each other. They discuss his wife. The main thing is that they don't spoil his mood with her name. That can happen too. He comes closer and closer and hears them talking about how the lady has been doing lately. The girl says that in the morning the lady was very pale. She wrapped her up warmer and then sent her to bed, but her soul is still uneasy. She thinks that it is probably better to call a doctor, and her colleague says that he was just talking and brought her chamomile tea, but also noticed that it didn't really help. The maid praised Kevin and then did something that the master shouldn't have seen. If she had only known that he was looking at them, she would never have done that. At that moment, he just passes by them, but they don't notice him and almost lose consciousness because they didn't expect to see him right now. They felt terribly ashamed, and he crept up so quietly that they would not have noticed him, even though everything that happens between them is only their business and their personal life. But it still turned out somehow awkward. In the end, he just walked past, didn't even say a word to them, thus leaving only a lot of thoughts because if he had at least said hello, they would have felt at least a little better. Meanwhile, the girl thanked the guy, but he didn't understand what she was thanking him for and asked what he had done for her. She asks, "How is that? What's wrong?" Because they had such a good conversation that she will now be in a good mood all evening. The Duke has already entered his room. He doesn't suspect anything. He closed the door behind him and calmly changes his clothes before going to bed. The guy takes off his outerwear. He doesn't even think that at night someone might surprise him or something might happen. He doesn't expect it. And then he turns his head to the side and sees his wife lying on the sofa. Although after the last conversation it seemed to him that she would not dare even come near this room. One might think that the very second he noticed her, he would grab her and throw her out of the room, but a whole minute passed and he calmly looked at her. The girl apparently decided to wait for him anyway, even though she came in the morning and didn't leave here once the whole day. The guy remembered the words of the servants who were discussing that something was wrong with his wife and immediately decided to move her. He, as usual, looked at her with a displeased look. He apparently doesn't care that she's feeling bad. He's only concerned that she's in his room. Then he said out loud that she was nothing but trouble, that she weighed much less than he thought. Surprisingly, instead of taking her somewhere, he deigned to carry her to his own bed. Although one would think that if she touched that place in his room, he would simply hate her. Here he is already covering her with a blanket, and this is the most genuine care that could be expected in such a situation from anyone, but not from him. It was more likely that he would throw her out of the room in any condition, but it was impossible to assume that he would do exactly that. It's impossible to believe that he gave her the opportunity to have a normal rest. I wonder how she will react to this when she realizes what happened. The girl is lying on this bed for the first time. And the most interesting thing is whether he will lie down with her. And if not, where will he spend this night? The guy didn't even go to sleep in another room. He settled down on the couch. We can consider that this is his first male act towards her. After some time, he woke up, remembered that he forgot to change his clothes, and then didn't want to sleep at all. Meanwhile, Julia dreams of her mother. The girl cries because only this person evokes warm emotions in her. When they were together a long time ago, it was the best and happiest period in her life. Something like this will probably never happen again. She is the second to reach out to her another in a dream, and points with her finger, exactly in the direction where her husband is sitting opposite her. She opened her eyes slightly, saw him on the chair, and at that very second realized that since she was seeing him from that angle, it meant that she was now lying on his bed. At first, she had the thought that it might be a dream, but then she decided to play it safe, got up. And as it turned out, it wasn't a dream. Julia can't find the words to say something to him. She wants to apologize and ask what's going on. And most importantly, how did he allow this to happen? So that she moved from the sofa to his bed. And she doesn't know yet that he himself decided so. So she has nothing to apologize for, except for the fact that she spent the whole day in his office. Only now the girl wondered how she could have ended up here, because she clearly remembered that before this, she was sitting on the couch, and even if she had been out of her mind, she would never have allowed herself and would not have dared to move to the bed under any circumstances. She was already expecting a scandal, but he started by saying that, according to the doctor, she most likely had a common cold. Julia didn't notice anything like that. She didn't even notice that someone was examining her while she was sleeping with us. Then the girl looked to the side and noticed something like medicine on the nightstand, but she had no idea what it was exactly. It turns out that while she was sleeping, her husband took care of her and called a doctor. But this was very unexpected from him, and such behavior even bothers her a little. Of course, she thanked him for everything he did for her, but at the same time, the lady is afraid that he will remain silent as usual and kick her out of here. She began to explain that she probably fell asleep without noticing it because of her illness, and then said that he could have woken her up and asked her to go to her room to rest himself. Meanwhile, he asks her to explain why she came into his room and why she couldn't just ask someone to let her know when he was coming. He listens to her attentively, and the girl, out of habit, is afraid to talk to him because he can get angry at any moment for no reason. But she still explained that she just needed to tell him something, to which he replied that he was listening to her carefully. Julia tries to find the right words because that's the only way to do it with him, because any word can cause an overly violent reaction. And then she sees that he is wary and dares to ask why he is reacting like that. She hasn't even said anything yet, especially since they are husband and wife, and, as it seems to her, there should be no need to be wary or tense now. In the end, she herself became more nervous than he was and already changed her mind about talking about what she came for that morning. Her whole face turned red. There was a slight tremor in her voice. The guy could have asked her now why she was so tense, but he didn't. Apparently today, he decided to pity her in everything. She tells him that she will probably go to her room to sleep and thanks her husband again for his concern. And he smiled suspiciously and walked up to her very sharply, as if he wasn't going to let her go so easily. Fernand says that she is right, they are husband and wife, but Julia does not understand what he is getting at, because before he could go crazy from just a hint that they were a couple, she became even more afraid, looking very closely into his eyes to immediately figure out how quickly his behavior would change. The guy didn't explain anything, he just said that he wanted to have their wedding night right now, only he said it as if he didn't care what she thought about it. He started touching her very slowly. Then he makes it clear that he is going to take off her clothes and she cannot believe her ears and eyes. Right after that, he started telling her that she would like everything and that there was nothing to be afraid of here. But she simply couldn't keep up with his train of thought. Julia simply didn't realize how dramatically his attitude towards her had changed. She asked him to wait a few minutes so she can get her thoughts in order, but he doesn't care about anything like that. He grabbed her hand roughly and made it clear that she didn't have time because it was enough that he wanted it. Fernand took a dominant position, and at that moment she was thinking that, firstly, she wouldn't be able to run far from him, and secondly, she had no idea how cruel he would be in this regard. She won't even have the opportunity to complain about anything or ask him to stop, because he simply doesn't care. And she doesn't even have time to tell him anything. He interrupts and hints that all she can do is accept it. The guy has already managed to take off almost everything he was wearing, but she doesn't recognize him and still can't understand whether she's not as disgusting to him as she used to be. Before, he got angry even when he saw her on the horizon, but now he suddenly grabs her hands and doesn't let go. Meanwhile, he asks what's wrong with her face and whether she really meant this by the phrase, husband and wife. The girl found an opportunity to put in a few words because she thought that maybe it would somehow stop him. She explains that she actually just came to talk to him and most likely he just misunderstood her. Julia is trying to make it clear that she wasn't interested in what he was thinking, but the guy reacts as if everything was clear and he couldn't be wrong. Since he was already listening to her attentively, Julia asked if he by any chance had the desire and time to go with her to his home, because the stepmother asked them to come together and hinted that if the girl came alone, she would be very unhappy. After this, Julia tells him that if he can't do it, then it's okay. She'll try to come up with something, because she wants to protect him no matter what. and she started getting dressed and is already getting ready to leave. She thought that he would not answer her, wished her good night, and began to think about how to justify herself to her stepmother. The girl had already put on her shoes, opened the door, and wasn't expecting anything, when suddenly he ran up to her very quickly. He grabbed her by the waist, pressed her closer to him, then dragged her onto the bed. This time, it wasn't so scary. The lady asks what it means. She is already sweating because her husband is too unpredictable today. Suddenly, he suggested that she stay here, and he himself was going to leave. But it is not yet clear why he is doing this. Julia has no idea what to answer him to this because she doesn't know what it means and why he suddenly started paying so much attention to her. Without waiting for a single word from her, he silently began to do as he wanted. Because if she had been categorically against it, she would have definitely said something by now. You can tell she wants to say or ask something, but she doesn't do it so as not to ruin anything. Her husband started to get dressed, and only now did she decide to ask why he was suddenly like this. Something he had never been like towards her. He just said that she can think whatever she wants. But he can't answer that yet. The gentleman went out into the corridor. He was met by the maid, and since she was there, he decided to ask her for something, so that she would call another doctor to his wife in the morning. He wants to know how she feels, although even his assistant hears this from him and cannot believe her ears. Usually he didn't want to hear anything about this person, but suddenly there was so much care and time, and at a time when he could be resting. Meanwhile, the girl is left alone. She is alone with her thoughts, which apparently will not give her peace until the morning. She constantly thinks that she is sleeping. His Highness took care of the medicine, caught her when she fell, and laid her on the bed. This is something out of the world of fantasy, and she thought all her life that he was not capable of such a thing. But as it turns out, he can be normal. Only something tells her that all this is not just like that. There must obviously be some kind of catch in his behavior. Although there was no love in his gaze, there was a bottomless sadness hidden in it. Yulia doesn't know what he was thinking about, but she hopes that someday he will remember her. That same girl he used to run after. She herself remembers that period of her life as something pleasant and bright. But who would have thought then that everything would turn out like this? As strange as it may sound coming from his wife, today she learned that it is very warm in his arms. It seems to her as if he is somewhere nearby even now. She wants that if this is a dream, then let it be eternal. Meanwhile, the guy came to take a shower because he wants to wash away everything that happened to him that day. And he can't get one of her phrases out of his head, which touched him a little at the same time. Made him laugh, namely, when she said that she wanted to protect him. And he now thinks to himself that if she heard herself from the outside, she would also laugh. At the same time, she still seems too irritating to him. It's just strange that it was the same before, but he really didn't think about her. And now all his thoughts are only about his wife and everything else connected with her. Several hours passed. The girl also woke up and quickly put herself in order. And in the meantime, they were already going somewhere in a carriage. It's impossible for that to happen, but it looks like the Duke did agree to go with her. And if that's the case, then that probably means something. It would be great if they talked to him about something. But she already wants too much from him. Apparently, she forgot how he treated her a couple of days ago. Then, he wouldn't even sit in the same carriage with her. So she has to be content with the fact that at least he doesn't grimace when looking into her eyes. At first he behaved normally, but then for some reason he started turning away as if he wanted to show that he was offended. Initially it was something like this. The girl didn't have any hopes, was getting ready to leave for her home, and suddenly an assistant came up to her to tell her that His Highness the Grand Duke had finished his morning business to convey that he would accompany her. Meanwhile, Fernand deigned to ask how she feels, and it feels like some kind of luxury. She immediately became happy, replied that she felt great, and thanked him for his concern because she couldn't even imagine that he might be interested in this. After that, the girl said that it was all thanks to his care. Otherwise, she would still be lying in bed. Probably because Yulia is now in the company of her husband. Even the weather seems especially clear and colorful. Now she only wants one thing: for this day to continue as calmly and well as it began. And in the meantime, time flew by surprisingly unnoticed, and now they have already arrived at their destination. The father went out to the street in advance to meet them, although he did not even expect that his daughter would not be alone. He said that he was very pleased about this. Before they had time to say hello, the guy immediately warned them that they would not be here for long. After all, work does not wait. And he also said directly that he was unhappy that the man knew how busy he was and still ordered him to come through his wife, thinking that no one would understand. The girl's father pretended he didn't hear it. He no longer cared how his wife had made them come. The main thing was that they were here. After that, he said that since they couldn't treat them to lunch, they could at least enjoy tea in the garden. And besides, their pastry chef had just returned from vacation. He asked his daughter to take the Grand Duke inside and show him the mansion while everything was being prepared. And as soon as the food was on the table, he would call them immediately. Julia and Fernand had already entered the mansion. The girl began the tour from the first floor. There are a lot of portraits collected here. After that, she started to tell that her mother treasured this place more than anything in the world and put a lot of effort into it, so no one was allowed to enter here. Then they came to one particular portrait that was a little difficult for her to look at, because it depicted the period of her life when she was last happy. This portrait was created for guests who come to the mansion, and the initiator was her mother. The woman could not stop admiring her daughter and collected everything connected with her, especially images in any forms. But when my father's second wife, the Marquise, appeared in this house, she said from the first day that she wanted to hang something else here. The lady sometimes glances at her husband to understand whether he is interested or not, because there is a high probability that he is following her only out of politeness, unexpectedly. But now he looks like he is really interested in everything that is happening now. And in the meantime, she tells him that it may seem impolite, but she would like to ask him something. She had just said a few words when an assistant ran up to her to say that they could now approach the table, because everything is already ready. And he also said that he took part in the cooking today, so he is especially interested to know whether they will like the sweets or not. Julia thanked her and started walking towards the right room, but her husband didn't hear what she wanted to ask, so he stopped her so she could finish. The girl already thought that he was not interested. She was pleased that he was not as cold as before. But for some reason, she replied that it was no longer important, and if she wanted to discuss it again, she would let him know about it. She just decided not to rush because she thinks there is no point in rushing. Especially now, it is better to focus on the main thing for which they came here. The girl apologized for having interested him in vain, although she even liked it. What's there to hide? Then she thanked him for making time for her, despite his busy schedule, but she thought that she should give importance to the time spent with His Highness. They were told that everything was ready, but the assistants were still setting the table, which is very strange. The man apologized for what happened. He didn't want to rush them unnecessarily, and to make time go faster. He started asking how he liked the mansion. Usually in such cases, people say that they like everything, but the guy is a straightforward person, so he said that there are too many pictures here. The man began to justify himself, saying that his wife loved art very much, which is why there was so much of it in this house. And he also said that his wife especially loves the portrait of Julia, which is a real, blatant lie. After he talked to the guy for a bit, he walked up to his daughter and asked if she would mind going away with him for a bit, because he bought her some jewelry and dresses, but he doesn't know if she'll like them or not. Then he remembered that the Grand Duke might get bored, so he immediately came up with something for him to do. He suggested reading their proposal for city business to somehow pass the time. While two guys with documents approached him, a man could be heard saying that he couldn't wait to see how good the jewelry would look on Julia. In fact, he simply took her out into the garden so that no one would disturb them while they talked. The first question his father asked was how the Grand Duke had been doing lately. Are there any suspicious rumors? For example, has he started going out too often? Or maybe there were suspicions that he started dating another girl. To which she replied that she didn't know for sure, except that he was very busy, although her father clearly expected to hear much more from her. He indignantly asked what she was doing in the ducal mansion and whether she had used the medicine he had given her last time. In fact, she somehow completely forgot about him and now doesn't know what to answer, and if she takes a long time to answer, he will definitely suspect something and may not even believe her words. And then it started. He starts pressing with questions about why she's hesitating and whether her father should himself slip it to the Grand Duke. After this, he also asked her if she had forgotten by chance that he had repeated to her repeatedly that if the engagement with the Grand Duke was not valid, then she will automatically cease to be his daughter. So he insists that she give birth to his child by any means necessary, unless of course she wants to be abandoned like her own mother and rot alone for the rest of her life. And even if her body, like then, is not ready, you can simply use the medicine and force him to spend the night with her. The girl was indignant. How could he say such a thing? She was very much offended by his phrase, namely, how then? Then he suggested not to concentrate on it because in any case, no matter how strong his body was, if the guy took the potion, everything would happen by itself. The girl doesn't believe that her own father is saying this. She tries to ask him if he's gone crazy, and he asks her to stop thinking about her own things and just listen to him, because that's the only way he, and their family can survive. He asks her to use what she was given and slowly seduce the Grand Duke to the best of her ability, and he will get as much medicine as needed. The man thought that if they were gone too long, the Duke would suspect something, so it was better to go back already. After such a conversation, she decided for herself that she needed to immediately go back and throw away this terrible medicine. Meanwhile, the man called his assistant and said that, as he had heard, the Grand Duke was not one to be easily fooled, so he needed to get an even stronger potion and give it to Julia. Meanwhile, Julia had already returned home. She ran to her room so quickly that she didn't even have time to say hello to anyone. Melissa was cleaning her room and was even a little scared when the lady ran in here so abruptly. The girl asked after the things were brought in while she was not there, whether anyone had cleaned out the place, for example, the storage boxes. Melissa asks if something happened or if something is missing, and Julia looks inside and realizes that there is nothing there anymore. She clearly remembers that she locked this box tightly, and nothing could have disappeared from there so easily. She said that one thing she kept here disappeared, but it seems the assistant has no idea how it happened and who could have done it. The assistant also does not understand how a thing that was locked could disappear, because not one of the maids, unless she is crazy, would dare to touch anything in this room. Then she says, who knows? Maybe there were some impudent people. She decided to question the servants and maids and then promised to definitely find the missing item. She didn't notice how the Duke was on the way. She bumped into him and felt terribly awkward, because if he was in a bad mood now, then soon everyone would be in the same mood. The guy asked if they have lost something. It's as if he is eavesdropping on the conversation and understands perfectly well what is going on here. Then he allowed the maid to run on and went up to his wife to ask what had happened to her. She doesn't even know how to tell him correctly and whether she needs to tell him anything about it at all, which she seriously doubts. The guy didn't even hear her answer. He started saying that no matter how much she searched, it would still be in vain. And then he took something out of his pocket that she never expected to see in his hands. At that moment, she wanted to fall through the ground so that she wouldn't have to explain anything. He asks if he understands correctly that she needs this, and she freezes in place and is afraid to even blink once more. Julia asks how he came to this conclusion. That he said that, in fact, he has the same question and he thinks that she should answer it. Why did she suddenly need a potion that is impossible for an ordinary person to obtain, and which is used for special purposes that he knows very well? Then he laughed and said that she pretended to be an innocent lamb so well that he didn't even suspect. She kept talking about responsibility, about the fact that they were spouses. But in the end, hiding behind a sweet face, she ran and looked for medicine to give to her own husband. He thinks she must have had a lot of fun leading him on and deceiving him all this time. On the day he visited the imperial palace, upon his return he saw Julia enter his bedroom without asking and fall unconscious. For some reason he felt sorry for her then and was surprised at how this could be. She didn't wake up for several hours. She was in agony, as if she was having a nightmare and he couldn't leave her side. And only after a long time did she open her eyes to call him, looking with a clouded gaze. A woman with an absolutely pure look. A woman who seems to be like a marquise, but at the same time, no. A woman whose true intentions are difficult to discern. Unlike her father, who is as simple as 2 kopecks. She pushed him away with a look as if she was about to cry. Then her small, trembling body seemed too fragile to him. He felt guilty watching her rise to leave. The thought of her taking charge of his protection, being a little crystalline, was ridiculous. Pity, guilt, and confusion. It was Julia who made him experience these mixed feelings, and her mere frail appearance moved him to the depths of his soul. Because he had given in to such trivial feelings. Some time passed and suddenly, the Duke's assistant comes to tell him something. He said in advance that I was something interesting, so the guy was already intrigued. The assistant says that the Marquise was secretly talking to the lady, and he recorded their conversation verbatim before they noticed. After the gentleman read all these notes, the assistant tells him that maybe this is just grumbling. But beautiful flowers have many thorns, so he advises not to trust his wife too much, otherwise it could end badly. And then he even allowed himself to call the girl a cunning and terrible woman, as well as a person who holds the most dangerous blade aimed at his highness. The guy has never heard anything like this before. He doesn't even know what to think about it, and he didn't really answer because he probably had the same opinion about her, and it doesn't surprise him. Then he said that he would probably go first, and his assistant wished him a safe journey. Jar contained. The assistant said that this remedy is usually used for those who, so to speak, do not have enough male strength, but it also contains a strong component that can create hallucinations. It is quite a dangerous substance that is secretly distributed among some aristocrats, and it must have been difficult to obtain. So the assistant is even interested to know where the master got it. And the guy doesn't even know what to say to this. He's ashamed to tell the truth because, who knows, maybe they'll secretly start laughing at him. Because to find yourself in such a situation is very shameful, especially for such a respected and famous person as he is. What he had just heard was not surprising. He felt stupid for having succumbed to her influence for a moment, and tried to believe it at least a little, but strangely enough, when her mask was torn off, his soul felt lighter. He would like to know how many people she has already deceived, although he himself almost succumbed to her influence. Now he was determined to never again allow himself to be fooled by such tricks. After all, even the slightest feeling that he had for her has now faded and will never appear again. At least he is sure of it. Meanwhile, she tries to catch up with him to explain everything, because it turns out that he mistakenly thinks that she is some kind of traitor. Here she is already caught up with him. Her heart is beating terribly. Panic has set in. Her head is spinning, because if nothing is fixed now, she will forever remain his enemy, and absolutely undeservedly so. She says she knows it's hard to believe, but she never intended to use the medicine, and she also intended to throw it away as soon as she entered the mansion. Her throat is so dry that she can't speak properly, and she needs to explain in more detail so that His Highness will forgive her. He told her coldly, pleased, because now it doesn't matter to him at all. What matters is that from now on he has no reason to respect her. Then he started walking very quickly somewhere, already closing the door behind him, and she barely managed to catch up with him. At the very last moment, she did not have time to go in with him. The girl even felt for a moment as if she was really guilty before him. She is very offended to look at this closed door. He did not give her a single chance, although what can we talk about if she herself would have done the same in his place? She would not have been interested in listening to any explanations either. But being in her place, it was really offensive that she was against her father's idea, did not want to harm her husband. And everything turned out in such a way that the Duke misunderstood everything. Julia imagined how wonderful everything could have been if he had listened to her and found out that she really didn't wish him harm. He would start to treat her better, stop perceiving her as an enemy. But in reality, everything turned out exactly the opposite. Tears began to appear in her eyes. Darkness appeared in her eyes, and after that, the girl completely lost control of herself. Her body switched off. It was lucky that one of the servants was nearby, Otherwise, she would have been lying here for who knows how long. The assistant came up. She was so scared for her that she was going to lie down next to her now because it looked scary. She tries to talk to her, but the lady is unconscious. She hears nothing and sees nothing. There haven't been such situations here for a long time, so the assistant has forgotten how she should act correctly. The next day has come. Yulia can't think of anything else. She wants to apologize to her husband and make him understand her. She woke up early, put on whatever came to hand, and was already sitting on the steps, so that as soon as he appeared in the corridor, she would immediately run up to him. Meanwhile, she begs him to stop at least for a little while and talk to her. But with every word she says, she only loses her temper. The guy reminded her that he had previously asked her to refrain from coming to him in the mornings, and she was trying to explain that if not now, then later, she would certainly not be able to see him. The Duke pushed her hand away and asked why she didn't understand the first time, and how else she should be explained so that she would stop bothering him forever. Then he said that if she hadn't realized it yet, he no longer intended to respect her. So he advised her to stop her tricks and sit quietly in the bedroom. He pushed her away from himself as best he could. Yulia returned to the same place, cried, and then tried to calm herself with the thought that tears wouldn't solve anything anyway. She thought that she should first read the ledgers and inspect the inside of the castle to see if anything needed to be fixed. She doesn't know what to do next, but right now the best thing she can do is to be as useful to His Majesty as possible. It remains to be hoped that everything will work out, and as soon as there is a chance, they will definitely discuss everything with him, because she is sure that His Majesty has a kind heart. If it weren't so, he wouldn't have taken care of her when it was needed. Thanks to this incident, she found out that he was only so cold on the outside, but inside he still had something good. Julia calmly walks down the corridor, trying not to think about anything bad, but everything bad seems to be attracted to her. Wherever she is, the girl accidentally overheard the maids discussing that the master probably has a mistress hidden somewhere. Otherwise, how can we explain that he hasn't appeared for 2 months, and if he does return home, it's only for a short time? They are discussing it so actively that they haven't even checked to see if there is anyone who could overhear their conversation. Meanwhile, another one of them says that even if this is true, he is unlikely to want to return home, where there is nothing interesting, or rather, no one. The third says that it is a pity, His Majesty, to have to receive unsolicited love from someone who is a thorn in the side. It is impossible to even describe how Julia feels at this moment. Everything is clear here, without explanations. And they also discuss how good they lived here when there was no Grand Duchess. After that, the girl could not stand it anymore. She left, because if she hears anything else about this, she will close herself off for a long time and will not want to do anything at all. As the lady ran away, she also heard those girls saying that it would be better if she disappeared somewhere quickly or never left the room at all. It was as if they were deliberately discussing it loudly so that she would hear every word and know what they were thinking about her. Meanwhile, Melissa is doing her hair in front of the mirror, and at that moment the girl decided to take the opportunity to ask when His Highness will return. Melissa didn't have time to answer, and the girl was already afraid that he wouldn't show up at all, especially after what happened. The assistant is sure that the gentleman is probably just very busy. He used to come at night too when things piled up. She has been working here for a very long time, so she asks you to trust her and not worry about this. After this, Melissa suddenly asks if the lady has any plans for today, and Yulia doesn't even know what she means by that. The girl says that she just wanted to read books in the office. She has been preparing for this for a long time, but she still can't sit down to read them because she immediately gets sleepy. Melissa asks how about a walk around the city because, as far as she remembers, the lady never got to see the surrounding area that time. The lady asks if Melissa has finished her work, to which she replies that serving the Grand Duchess is the greatest thing possible. And since Julia agrees, Melissa is already in a hurry to call the carriage. Maybe such a spontaneous walk is just what she needed. She could have some fun and clear her head from all these thoughts. Meanwhile, Fernand is busy with his work. He called his subordinate to him to find out how the smuggling case is progressing. Lloyd replied that they were still investigating the details, so he didn't have much information yet. It will take some time, but soon a full list of transactions and group members will be compiled. From what has been revealed so far, they are on the trail of a large organization that is selling a powerful aphrodisiac in the red light district. They are getting aristocrats like the Marquis Elodis hooked on the drug and then supplying them with the required amount. Lloyd also clarified whether he understood correctly that the gentleman wanted to destroy the entire network so that the Marcus could not escape. Smugglers are hard to spot. They usually hide in the shadows, but the assistant will still do everything possible to get to the truth. Fernand warned that he was particularly interested in those involved in the trade, starting with the Marcus and those behind him. The guy promised that he would do everything possible, especially since he has long been aiming for a promotion, so this matter is special for him. He must show the maximum of his capabilities. After this, the assistant seemed to start talking to himself. He reasoned out loud, why should the Marquis get into trouble? He would end up in a noose. This is an idea for senseless risks. For him, all this is very strange. He understands perfectly well that he is a pawn that can be sacrificed at any moment. But at least his self-confidence can only be envied. Then Lloyd thought a little, and said that he would dare to ask whether the gentleman was planning to assign his children to the Grand Duchess. After all, she can cooperate with the Marquis, and wouldn't it be better to destroy the danger at the moment of its origin? This would at least save unnecessary trouble. Especially when the Marquis Elotus used his own daughter as a shield. He did a lot of work, raising her to be the perfect tool. As soon as the guy heard this, he immediately ordered him to leave here, as if he was afraid to splash out his anger on him right now. The assistant noticed that as soon as he mentioned the Grand Duchess, Fernand went crazy, as if she were as dear to him as a person. When he was already leaving, at the very last moment, he decided to mention that between the preparations for the day of the foundation of the empire and the attacks of monsters on the borders, he was not sure that he had been informed about this. So he wants to ask if he has heard anything about any unrest in his lands lately. It just so happened that when he started telling him about it, exactly the same situation started happening with the gentleman's wife and Melissa. They just went out for a walk at that time. The weather was beautiful outside, nothing foreshadowed trouble. It was supposed to be a quiet walk, but it turned out a little differently than they wanted. Two guys suddenly come up to them, knock a new bouquet out of their hands, and each of these guys takes on a girl. It feels like they've been chasing them for a long time. Melissa and Yulia didn't even have time to see their faces. They're in complete shock now and don't understand what they did to be detained like that. The one who holds the lady tells her that if she does not twitch and goes with him, he will reward her generously. And at the same time, the assistant reports to the gentleman that unknown groups are terrorizing young nobles. Apparently, the girls just encountered such a group. It's good that they don't know about it yet. Otherwise, they would have already lost consciousness. According to the available data, these people are engaged in extortion and trade, only not the usual kind, but the kind that is directly related to people. 7 deaths have already been recorded over the entire period, and no matter how it sounds, if no one helps them now, there may be 2 more of these cases. Once upon a time, when the girl was little, her childhood was so wonderful that it can't even be described in words. She associates her mother with something beautiful, bright, warm, and love. Then she told her daughter that when Julia gets married, her mother will make her a bouquet of lilies of the valley, a memory from those times when she vaguely remembered even her own mother's face. But no matter how much time passed, her gentle voice and words about lilies of the valley remained forever in her memory. When the girls were passing by the flower stand, the assistant noticed the lady looking at them and asked if she really liked something that much. She replied that she had really liked lilies of the valley for a long time. And in that case, Melissa suggested buying a small bouquet to brighten up the day even more. At first she refused, but Melissa insisted because she saw how Julia looked at them with sad eyes. Then she plans to walk around the street shops and have a bite to eat together to relieve all the accumulated fatigue. She just understands that if not now and not with her, then never and with no one. Julia agreed very quickly because she understood that her assistant would definitely not leave her alone. If she had something in mind, she would see it through to the end. They ended up buying a ton of stuff and realized too late that they should have taken a porter with them. They had bought so much that they couldn't handle it with 4 hands. It so happened that when they were arguing about who would carry the heaviest thing, one of those guys noticed them and quietly came closer and closer. Then, they pushed the 2 of them so hard that everything that was in the bags fell out. It's good that there was nothing edible in there, otherwise all the food would have spoiled. Julia asked how Melissa was feeling because she thought the man was careless, and she didn't even think it was done on purpose. The girl asked her assistant not to worry about things because the main thing is that she doesn't get hurt anywhere. They didn't even really notice that man. And they weren't going to tell him anything either because, again, they thought it was an accident. When they were discussing what to do now, they turned their heads to the side and saw that he was not going anywhere and was looking at them strangely. Meanwhile, Fernand is still in contact with that assistant. They apparently can't break up. The gentleman noticed that the atmosphere in the estates was downright unsettled, and Lloyd said that it was because a lot of people had arrived in anticipation of the founding celebration, and also because of the unrest with the monsters on the border. Refugees were flocking here. In that case, the gentleman asked to make a list of the newly arrived and the traders first of all. It just so happened that at that moment they were passing by the same place where the girls ran into those people. The guy accidentally looked to the side and noticed that there were some things and a bouquet of flowers lying on the floor. At first it made him wary, but then he thought that anything could have happened and decided not to be distracted by other people's problems. Meanwhile, these 2 are still holding the girls. One of them says that if they had kept quiet, he would have treated them kindly. But now they themselves are to blame for everything. Julia started to struggle. She thought that she might succeed, but he squeezed her even tighter and ordered her not to twitch. Otherwise, she would ruin something. She had already mentally begun to hope that someone would help, but there was no one around and she couldn't even scream. Just as the girl had come to terms with the fact that she and her assistant were trapped and it was unknown what would happen to them next, a miracle happened. By some miracle, her husband found her. He came up from behind and kicked this hooligan who dared to touch his wife. The guy started to get indignant, who dared to push him, started to turn around. Only now he clearly has no idea who he will see in front of him. He just saw the blade of the sword, immediately understood everything, and fell silent. And the girl, meanwhile, feels ambiguous, because after the last conversation, she thought that even if her husband saw this, he would just pass by and would not care about her. She already thought that he would never do something like that, but as it turned out, miracles still exist in her life for sure. While the guy is dealing with that bully, He asks her to explain what she did here and why he didn't know anything about it. After all, if it weren't for those scattered things that he once saw and recognized from her, he would never have guessed that she was in some kind of trouble. One would think that he would be gentle with her, but the guy is upset that his words seemed like empty words to her, although he recently told her to sit quietly in the room. She tried to explain that she went out for a short walk to get some fresh air, but her legs started hurting badly and Yulia didn't have time to finish again. She didn't think it would happen. She started to fall because there was nothing to hold on to. Suddenly, he was able to help her again. The guy caught her at the very last moment and said that she was always having some kind of adventure and he was tired of being on guard. After this, he asked his assistant to call a carriage and collect all the things that were lying on the floor and hand them over to the guards. The carriage arrived literally in a couple of minutes, much faster than usual, probably because it was his request. Fernand sat her down on the seat and asked how she was feeling, and this was the first such question from him that she had heard in all the time they had been married. The girl remembered her assistant. She just wanted to say that she didn't come here alone. The guy found Melissa and asked her to return to the estate. It's strange that he didn't let her get into the carriage too. Julia felt very awkward because she would return in comfortable conditions. And the assistant, it was unclear how. And then she thought that if fate had brought them together again, then she should take advantage of this opportunity and ask that very question. She asked him directly if it was true that he wasn't returning to the mansion because of her, even though she knew that he probably wasn't happy to hear that from her. Julia thought he would ignore her or come up with something, but he asked what she meant, as if he didn't mind discussing it. She tells him that she was just worried about that incident with the aphrodisiac. After all, it was her fault, and His Highness had every reason to misunderstand. She explained that she never really thought of harming him, as strange as it may sound, to which he replied that she seemed to be confused about something, because he was not mistaken about her. And if she is interested in knowing the reason for such an attitude towards her, then so be it. He is ready to answer her questions. It's all very simple, even simpler than she could have imagined. And the point is that he didn't want to marry her in the first place. That's the reason why everything is so complicated in this relationship. These words hurt her so much that she even felt physical pain, because she had never heard anything more terrible than this. She wants to ask him a lot of things, but she can't, because it's as if she's lost the gift of speech. She's become so resentful that her body itself can't communicate with him. This means that she always hoped, no matter what, that he had some feelings for her. But they were not there from the beginning. It was impossible to expect, but she says the following, that she liked him from the very beginning, and so much so that she did not love anyone else as much as him, except for her mother. Of course, she then saw the meaning of her life in him, dreamed of a future together, and could not even imagine that even if they got married, that everything would happen exactly like this. Then she tells him that she is now trying to be completely sincere with him. Julia did not even have time to finish what she wanted. He interrupted her and told her that she was still delusional and that her feelings were of absolutely no use to him, whether she liked it or not. And then he just walked away as if nothing had happened. It is impossible to even predict what will come of this, how they will live on, because he told her the whole truth and now has the full moral right not to be at home as much as he wants. And he won't even have to justify it, because she will understand everything. A few days later, 3 days before the founding festival, a meeting with the Emperor and Empress is scheduled for that day. The girl greeted Her Majesty the Empress and Her Highness the Crown Princess. And the woman thought that the girl must be tired from the journey and offered to come in and sit down, as if she knew what hospitality was. And in the meantime, they ask why her husband is not with her. And the girl hates this question the most because when she leaves home, this is the first thing they ask her. She replied that Fernand was just very busy, so she arrived early because she couldn't say that they had an unclear relationship, so he wasn't here. The girl for some reason promised that he would be there on the day of the holiday, although in fact, since the day she saw him last, he never returned to the estate, so it's a bit wrong to promise that he will because he never said anything like that. After that, the woman said that she heard that the unrest with the monsters on the border was only getting worse. Then the absence of the Grand Duke was quite understandable, and they understood everything. And she also thinks that this may even be for the best, because sometimes it is useful to spend time only in female company. Then she was invited to go further. The Empress ordered tea and snacks to be prepared, but trying anything here was quite a risk. As expected, Yulia thanked for the hospitality, for understanding, and also for the treats. This means that she is a valuable guest here, otherwise none of this would have happened. The table is really very beautiful. Although there is not much of everything here, it is very fresh and fragrant. Julia asks the Crown Princess how she is feeling, to which the girl replies that the morning sickness has almost passed, so she feels much better. And she also said that, nevertheless, in her opinion, the Grand Duchess looked worse than she did. But she probably didn't think about how ugly that sounded. Not only did she misinterpret what she wanted to convey, she also continued with the words, "You seem even thinner than the last time we met," and then asked if she was eating well. Then she didn't even give her a chance to answer. She began to assume that the Grand Duchess must have a lot of worries that were gnawing at her from within, and then asked the girl if she didn't mind. Would she like to join them with Veronica at the evening mass? Only Julia didn't understand what that word meant, and asked what it meant. The lady replied that there were currently priests visiting the imperial palace who were praying for expectant mothers. She suggested asking for a blessing because she thinks that after that she will feel much better. Here they are already there, when suddenly the man says that it seems he sees her for the first time, because usually those who come to him regularly come. Then he apologized, because in fact, people have the right to come here even once, but there's no problem with this, so everything is fine. Meanwhile, the emperor finally waited for the Grand Duke to finally come to them, an event that is already considered a luxury here. The man says that he already thought that since the guy didn't show up for the parade, he wouldn't come to the banquet either, but that's how it happens. It sounds like he wants to hear some kind of explanation, or at least feels a little ashamed about it. But no one heard anything like that from him. As usual, the guy just kept silent, as if he hadn't been asked anything. Then he decided to improve a little and not be such an unpleasant conversationalist, so he asked how he could miss such a significant day. The man couldn't keep silent. He says, "Does this mean that the couple wasn't honorable enough for him, so he didn't show up?" It was a very unpleasant conversation. The girls stood aside and tried not to interfere, so that it would not drag on for some time. Meanwhile, very unexpectedly, His Majesty noticed that dancing would soon begin, although he was usually not interested in this. It turns out he said this to invite Veronica to join him, but before that he asked how she was feeling, and she replied that everything was fine, and of course she would be happy to dance with him. Of course, Julia felt a little awkward. She also wanted to take part, and since she had no one here except her husband, she just turned towards him to hint at the dance, and he already turned away as if he felt that she would tell him this. It was a bit unpleasant. He pretended to be talking to some man and put her in an awkward position. Thus, she was left completely alone. And even if someone offered to dance, she would not be able to agree, so as not to offend her husband. After all, for everyone they are supposedly a happy couple and they have no problems. And if someone sees that she agrees to dance with someone else without any problems, this will lead to a lot of rumors that no one needs. At some point, the guy got tired of pretending to be sociable. He went out onto the balcony to get some fresh air and relax, but as usual, nothing worked out for him, because his wife is constantly watching him. And even now, she didn't let him be alone because she wants to be together. She pretended that she just came to ask how he was feeling, although she just needed to be there. She says that she thought he drank too much wine, and she asked for a favor to bring tea, which helps quite well. You can already tell from his look that the guy is happy with her. The main thing is that he keeps his emotions to himself now because there are too many people around who can hear it. She feels very awkward because she doesn't know how to approach him. Although in her case, there is no way because there is no topic that he would be happy to discuss with her. And then he tells her that if she thinks that this will make things better, then no. Her concern is now absolutely useless. And after that, the husband asked if he understood correctly that she enjoyed getting on his nerves day after day, despite everything he tells her. She tried to apologize to him, saying that she was simply worried about his highness. But all these words meant nothing to him. And in his thoughts, this is what, again these eyes, pure and irritating at the same time. The harsher I treat her, the more clearly the pain is visible in them. When she tried to seduce me with lies about love, she looked exactly the same. In the end, he hinted to her that perhaps she should worry about her future rather than theirs together, because it simply does not exist and never will exist. After that, another equally painful question was asked. How can she think or hope that this marriage is eternal? She looks at him with huge eyes because she thought he was so cruel to repeat it a second time. And at that moment, he thinks that after this, she should definitely understand, let him go, and back off. She feels like he's doing it on purpose to make her feel terrible and unable to talk to him normally, instead of proving something, begging him to talk. For the first time, she easily took and left him with the words that she would not bother him anymore. He somehow didn't think that it would be so easy, and now he doesn't even know why he rejected her so quickly. He is worried about the fact that every time he says something offensive to her, his conscience gnaws at him, and very strongly, so much so that he then cannot find a place for himself. And then some girl in a red dress comes in. He didn't have time to say anything to her, and she started apologizing. Because it so happened that she accidentally overheard their conversation, and she also introduced herself as the daughter of the Duke of Blair. Her name is Cornelia. He asks her why she approached him, because everyone knows that he doesn't like meeting people, and here the most interesting part begins. She heard everything, understood, and says that it looks like the Grand Duke hates his wife and hides it from the people for some reason. And then she came closer to him and said that she thought her father could help him, and very easily and quickly. She thinks that this should interest him, and in order not to be pulled inside, she directly offered him to enter into an alliance with their family. All this happens at the time when his wife is walking down the hallway in tears and doesn't know how her life will turn out next. Because the more she hears such words from him, the less she wants to exist in this world. She dreams of feeling that someone needs her, and besides all these problems, her feet also hurt a lot. She put on new shoes today, and because of them, her legs are all red as if someone had beaten them up and made fun of him. And then suddenly a man comes up to her. He addresses her, but she doesn't immediately understand from his voice who it could be. After his wife approached him, he especially did not expect to meet anyone, especially with such proposals, even if it would suddenly be beneficial for him. Now he does not understand anything and is afraid to answer in the heat of the moment. To begin with, he asked who she was, and the girl was surprised that he didn't remember her. and at the same time made him feel guilty. She said that it was a little offensive to hear that. In childhood, they had once discussed their possible engagement. Then she said with a slight laugh that she was Cornelia from the Duke of Blair's house. And he was probably tired of hearing this and asked her to stop. He had only 2 questions for her. Was she in her right mind or not? And how often was she dropped as a child? He answered in his style, rudely, but as it is. After that, he started to leave, showing that he was not interested in this conversation, and she was not going to let him go, asking what just happened. And he finally said that it was not important, because now he would simply forget her words, and he advised her to do the same. She was very angry with him because she thought that everything would be simpler. Apparently, she didn't take into account at that moment that he is not an easy person, especially with strangers, especially when it comes to his personal life. She felt humiliated, wanted to take revenge on him at the same time, still plans to persuade him to make a deal. This means that the girl will not leave him alone. That is, now he has 2 problems in the form of a wife and this Cornelia, who appeared out of the blue. The guy returned to the main hall in the hope that she would not touch him again. And he also had a strong desire to go home, because the longer he was here, the more troubles and unnecessary conversations happened. He is already wary of any people who come his way, because it seems that absolutely everyone wants to ask him something. While he stands still and thinks about what to do next, his wife's phrase plays in his head that she brought him tea and just wanted to stand next to him. And after that, the most difficult thing began. He began to confuse all the people around him with her, even men. So much she apparently enchanted him with herself. He can no longer tell where she is and where strangers are. It is becoming simply unbearable for him to be here. And in general, he doesn't really like such events. Usually he found a way to leave early, but now he has no ideas. Then he admitted to himself that it seemed like he was starting to go a little crazy because this was no longer any good. Meanwhile, Julia is talking to the same guy she saw at the blessing, but she still doesn't understand what he wants from her. She never expected to see him here, and yet, somehow it just so happens that when she was sad, he appeared at the right time. Suddenly he says that he somehow felt that her foot hurt in the area where her shoes are, and this is absolutely true, although she did not even say it out loud. She started to say that everything was fine, and he shouldn't worry about it. But before she could even finish speaking, he was already starting to do something and asking her not to interfere. She felt terribly uncomfortable because he didn't owe her anything. And meanwhile, the guy says that he heals quite well with the help of holy power. So it's not difficult for him, and she may not think that she's bothering him in any way. He started doing something. She felt a magical power. It was simply indescribable. She will remember these feelings for the rest of her life. Literally, a couple of seconds passed and a real miracle happened. It was as if she hadn't been wearing heels all day. There was no trace of pain left. The girl says that nothing hurts anymore, and the redness on her legs is slowly going away, after which he says that he is very glad that he was able to help. After that, he asked to be allowed to take his leave, and she asked him to stay for 1 minute because she wanted to tell him something. She has only one question for him, whether they have met by chance before, because she has a feeling as if they even knew each other, to which he replies that it is quite natural that she does not remember him. And he also said this with a slight smile, after which she no longer feels so awkward and is not afraid that it sounded ugly on her part. It turns out that when he first saw her, she was a newborn baby, so it's only natural that she has no memories of him. Then he thought that she would be interested to know something else. He told her that when he saw her, he was 15 years old. When you often use holy power, it often affects your appearance, and he hopes that now she has no questions for him. It turns out that he is now 37 years old, although you can't tell at all, but his words made her think, since he saw her when she was a baby, he definitely saw her mother. So while there was an opportunity, she didn't miss it and asked the next question. What she was like, what they talked about, and what impression he had of her in general, as if she had forgotten that it was a long time ago. At this point, people started to leave the hall, which meant that the reception was over. Immediately after this, the Holy Father returned to the conversations and said that he was sure she had a lot of questions, but unfortunately, it was time for him to go, and with all due respect, he couldn't stay even a minute longer. Julia already thought that this was all, and at the end, he asked to allow her to say only one thing, that she was a very important person for him. The girl expected to hear anything, but not this. Now she will think about this until their next meeting. He also said that he would always wish her happiness and promised that they would see each other soon, although she had no idea when that would happen. Now she has even more questions for him. He has intrigued her a lot, and she still doesn't know why. But after talking with the Holy Father, her soul suddenly felt somehow calm, although she didn't even think that today they would have such a good state inside. The girl thought she would be sad all night, and he helped her a lot without realizing it. Now all that remains is to hope that these words really come true. Meanwhile, the next day has come. Today the weather is a bit windy, just in line with her state of mind. The leaves are falling heavily outside. There are more and more of them. It's even a little calming. Julia didn't expect anything like this today, but her father sent her some letter again. But she has no idea what it might be. He's probably writing again about how it's time for her to have a baby or mix in some potion. Since the foundation party, they haven't said a word to him. She doesn't understand just one thing. How can he demand a child? especially in such a situation. In addition to everything, her husband simply cannot tolerate her, and the father's demand is still very far away. They need to at least stop hating each other. The girl has no idea whether she will feel even a drop of joy if she somehow finds out that she is pregnant. Although this is impossible because her husband does not come into her bedroom, let alone anything more, she is absolutely sure about this, and so far, there are only problems in this relationship. Pregnancy is out of the question. She, like any other girl, wants the father of her child to be a man who loves her and makes her happy every day. But he is not that kind of man yet. He's still going somewhere today. He didn't even bother to warn me. Although what's surprising, as if it was ever different. The girl called her assistant Melissa out of habit, and then remembered that she had a day off today, and that someone else was at work instead of her. This means she won't have anyone to talk to for the rest of the day, so she thought, why not go to the library and read some things? On the way, she was met by two maids. They greeted her, and Julia immediately recognized them. They were the same ones who had discussed her a couple of days ago. They hadn't even gone a little further when they began to talk, as if on purpose, about the fact that His Highness had just left the castle. And it was strange that the Duchess hadn't even seen him off. One of them asks if anyone would want to be seen off by a wife who was going to put some poison in their food, and after that they agree that everything is now clear. This relationship had no future and would never have any. At that moment, Julia finally realized that until the owner of the castle acknowledges her and treats her at least neutrally, the servants will follow him and treat her in exactly the same way. A feeling she is well familiar with from the Marquis's house. If His Highness himself ignores her, there's nothing she can do about it. She can only try not to take everything to heart. Here she is already in the library. It is very quiet here. You rarely meet anyone, just the kind of atmosphere that she needs now. Only in silence can she be alone with herself and hear her thoughts, which she can't hear when there's someone around. While she flips through the pages, she notices that she doesn't really read anything and tries to figure herself out. She is now completely confused inside. She really doesn't like this state. It only depresses her more and more. Julia changed her mind about staying here. She's already going somewhere. She probably came up with something. The main thing is not to do something that will only make the situation worse. Unsuspectingly, the lady opens the door, but it does not open, as if while she was reading the book, someone had locked it. It's very strange how this could happen. This has never happened before, and since it could have been done by one of the servants, it was probably those two maids who don't even hide their dislike for her. They definitely saw her going to the library. She really doesn't want to believe it. She has no other explanation for it. The lady starts to get angry. She knocks loudly on the door so that someone will definitely hear her, but she doesn't know yet how she will deal with this. This is already completely going beyond all boundaries. She feels that she has no authority here, because they are simply making fun of her like this, because they are sure that nothing will happen to them for it. There is still no one. She knocks even louder. There is also a feeling as if they are somewhere nearby. They hear everything and ignore, and maybe even mock. I wonder what the maids will say when they open the lock. They won't come up with the idea that the door is just jammed and they have nothing to do with it. Even if there is no one outside, and even if it is some kind of accident and no one is to blame, it still does not justify them, because she is calling for help very loudly and knocking on the door, and someone, but should have already come to help, to at least divert suspicion from themselves. But since no one approaches, it means that they are really trying to show their true attitude towards her. Now she has no doubt that it was done on purpose. The main thing is not to forgive them for this. As usual, everyone must answer for such impudence. Because even those who did nothing and still did not come to the rescue, they will also be punished. Unless, of course, she once again begins to forgive and pretend as if nothing happened, so that everyone will like it. Literally at the other end of the corridor, there are three maids, and they are chatting as if nothing had happened. But this is already in vain. Julia wonders if she deserves this kind of treatment, but the answer to this question is obvious. It's very simple. She just lets them do it. We need to make sure that she has at least some authority, then no one will dare even look at her askance. She never managed to get out of here. All hope is that Melissa will come tomorrow and notice her here. The lady is sitting on the floor because there is nowhere to sit, and she is also hungry. And even if she says it through the door, no one will care. It turns out that if nothing changes, she will have to sit here all night. And it is still unknown what surprises await her next, because perhaps this is not all. The girl is trying to figure out whether she should tell her husband about this. He is unlikely to stand up for her. He will probably be only glad to hear that this was done to her. She doesn't even doubt it, not a bit. And then she had hoped that suddenly her husband would return earlier than usual, see that she was not in the room, think that something had happened and start looking for her. She could already imagine him bursting into the library, all angry and asking how long she had been sitting there. Then he asks her to get up, gives her his hand and says in a gentle voice that everyone will answer for this and he will never allow them to do this again. She even felt the touch of his hand. It was very realistic, but unfortunately, her fantasy quickly ended. After these beautiful pictures, she saw the harsh reality and realized that she was already starting to go crazy here. The lady wondered what she was even thinking about. It was impossible, and there was no point in even dreaming about it. She looks at her feet and thinks about how it happened that she got to this point. She is not respected even in the house where she lives. She is laughed at by the maids who must be afraid of spoiling her mood and smile every time they see her. After some time, she tries to open her eyes while hearing familiar voices and does not realize what is happening. She somehow ended up on a bed in another room. Her husband and his assistant were standing nearby, and they were discussing how quickly her breathing and temperature had stabilized. She literally opened her eyes for a second, didn't suspect anything, and immediately closed them. Because she didn't even have the strength to look around. She doesn't care what's going on around her. She just wants to sleep, but the sun is shining right in her face, and that's why she sometimes wakes up. A couple of hours passed. The lady had slept well. She was already lying with her eyes open, and what was her surprise when she saw her husband in front of her, who, as usual, apparently found her and did everything he could. In this case, he opened the door, carried her to the bed, and made sure that nothing else happened to her during this time. Well, naturally, so that no strangers came in here. He himself is very interested to know how it happened that she ended up locked up. But more on that later. After all, it is much more important how she feels. And in the meantime, the girl asks how His Highness ended up here. He tells her that a maid named Melissa told her everything. He knows what happened and has a rough idea who is to blame. Although those maids claimed that the door was locked by mistake, they said that it was not at all on purpose. But he had long noticed that from the first day of her appearance here, they were unhappy with something. So everything fits. She is interested to hear what he thinks about it, but her husband is silent for now, probably doesn't want to burden her with this conversation. The guy apparently understands how difficult it is for her now, and that she doesn't need any more proof that almost everyone here doesn't like her. He just said, few people will not understand what happened here, and she herself probably understood everything immediately as soon as she found herself in a trap. Some time passed, and now he tells her that she can decide for herself what to do. He gives her this right. For example, Yulia can kick them out, punish them somehow, or have a conversation, anything to make it fair. The girl lies calmly on the bed and at first even doubted that he was saying this seriously. Every time she hears it from him differently. Sometimes she doesn't care about her. Sometimes he gives her the opportunity to take revenge on his servants. She told him that she wasn't going to do anything, although he expected to hear something like, "Thank you, I just have a few ideas." He thought that she was very offended by them and would only be glad of such an offer, but here's how it is. His wife surprised him a little, and meanwhile the girl says that these maids, like him, wanted her to disappear more than anyone else, so she thinks that he is even glad that they thought of this. He reacts as if it is absolutely not so, but now, not only he, but also she does not believe a single word he says. Julia asks if he doesn't understand why they did this to her, and he looks at her with such eyes as if he has nothing to say. The lady didn't want to talk to him anymore. She was about to go back to bed to sleep a little more, and her husband gave her some kind of bowl, and said that first she should eat something because right now she was apparently a little out of it, and the soup would just help her gain strength. She will also need to take some medicine a little later, but for now this can do, especially since she was hungry all night and she definitely shouldn't skip breakfast. The dish was so hot that she almost dropped it right on the bed, but somehow managed to hold it and almost didn't burn herself. Meanwhile, she started talking a little and said that she doesn't understand why he behaves like that. She's tired of being surprised by his care one day and running away with tears in her eyes from his hurtful words the next. After that, she reminded him, as he himself said, that this marriage would not last forever, and neither of them owed anything to each other. Accordingly, she has a question as to why he's now so benevolent, since now he could be doing his own thing and not wasting time on her. He said outright that he hated her, and that if they weren't married, his life would be better. After all these words, he still calls the doctor, stays nearby while she's unconscious. His actions are absolutely the opposite of what he tells her. To which Fernand replied that he was still thinking about ending the marriage and that she had said everything correctly. Her feelings still meant nothing to him, but he himself doesn't know why he sometimes becomes so weak around her, especially lately. It was very unexpected to hear this from him. Julia does not fully understand what this means and is afraid, as usual, to unexpectedly hear something unpleasant about herself. She was so tired of crying that she just asked him to leave her alone, at least for a while. After that, she lay down on the bed, closed her eyes, and he obeyed her. After all, while she was in this state, they had nothing to talk about yet. Moreover, he himself understands that he has told her so many things lately that Julia herself no longer wants to see him, even when she really needs support. The guy very quietly wished her good night, and he returned to his assistant and thanked him for waiting for him. Then he thought, why put off until tomorrow? What can be done today? And asked his assistant to take the guilty to the basement, and he would think about what to do with them. He is not going to forgive them for this behavior, because his personal relationship with his wife should not affect how they treat her. They work here, and should treat both of them with equal respect. He won't allow them to treat the lady like that. They must know her place. Everyone who looked at her badly or said something offensive will answer for it. The guy realized that he was spending too much time on his work, and had completely neglected the organization within the house. Some people used it, and this is what came out of it, but from tomorrow everything will change. He will very quickly restore order because he hasn't done this for a very long time. And now you can calmly go and rest. Today was a very hard day, especially before tomorrow. You need to get a good night's sleep. I am very pleased that the Duke has started to devote much more time and attention to his wife, although they are still far from an ideal relationship. The main thing is that the situation, albeit slowly, is still starting to change for the better. After the incident when she was locked in the office, the atmosphere in the ducal castle changed a little. For example, the girl sees all these maids for the first time today, since some changes have occurred, because her husband has seriously taken up this issue. His Highness fired all the servants who locked her in the office and severely punished those who saw and ignored it. Although she is not happy with this decision, it all happened because the girl again reminded herself how much His Highness does not want to hear hers. Today, he also only looks at the papers and it seems he doesn't notice her. Another case when it is impossible to understand anything from his behavior. The girl asks if he's tired by any chance, and he also asks why she's asking about it, to which he says that he just looks too exhausted. Julia still feels like he is ignoring her. This is evident in almost all situations where they are forced to be together, such as during lunch. She understands that he is unlikely to talk to her, so she also sits quietly and tries not to look in his direction, so that he too would feel at least a little awkward. From this unpleasant environment, she even lost her appetite. The food didn't taste as it could have, and suddenly, as usual, Julia starts first. She says that although she promised that she would not bother him anymore, she really needs to ask him about something, namely, when he plans to divorce her because it will happen anyway, and she needs to be prepared and know when it will happen approximately. He reacted somehow strangely. The girl thought that this topic would be pleasant for him, but he seemed to be dissatisfied with something else. The guy asks why she is suddenly interested in this. Does she really want to run to the Marquis and complain that he does not treat her like a wife? To which Yulia replied that in fact, she did not approach him with such thoughts at all. And then he says that she is an obedient daughter to her father. That is why he has no trust in her. None. It's very offensive to hear this. The girl didn't want the dialogue to turn out this way, but it is what it is. Meanwhile, the guy thinks that it is true. The woman in front of him is the precious daughter of the Marquis of Elodis, who got married against her will. He has no reason to worry about her or value her in any way. And in the meantime, he tells her that who knows, maybe she'll get some medicine again and try to slip it somewhere. It seems to him that the way he behaves with her, she fully deserves it. Supposedly, the wife does not deserve any other treatment. In that case, she has nothing more to do here. The girl got up and decided to leave because it is impossible to dine in the company of a person who says such things. She is already tired of all these sudden changes. Sometimes he is good, sometimes bad. Sometimes he is silent for days, sometimes he calls names. It is no longer possible. Her assistant immediately went after her because she understands her as a human being and cannot leave her alone. A couple of hours have passed since then. All this time, Julia sat in one place because she does not want to see or hear anyone. She feels so empty inside now that she could sit like that. Until the end of the day, she's just not interested in anything. Her husband has completely ruined her mood. He doesn't know how to choose his words and doesn't understand how much he hurt her with this. And the most offensive thing is that he doesn't even realize that Julia doesn't deserve such words. And in fact, she is much better than he can imagine. She is a very kind and good person who is constantly being set up. And that's why he has formed a false opinion about her. Melissa thought that she needed to distract the lady urgently, otherwise she would become depressed. She said that the bouquet that they had bought earlier at the market had wilted. These are not lilies of the valley, but she doesn't see anything wrong with replacing some flowers with others so that they don't get boring. The girl said that she was not against it in principle, but it was so casual, as if she didn't care. She looks like whatever happens now, she will simply not care, and will not care at all. The situation is not improving, so the assistant already suggests that she take a walk in the garden, especially since the weather outside is fine now. Surprisingly, Julia didn't even have to be persuaded. She immediately agreed. And since she doesn't talk, Melissa started talking about the fact that maybe, because winter is coming, the garden in the Duke's castle now looks a little sad. And after that, she asked if the lady would like to take on the arrangement of it, so that closer to spring it would become even more beautiful. She is sure that Julia will cope with this very easily and in the best possible way. The lady replied that she thought the butler would sort it out himself, because it was still unknown whether she would stay here until spring. Because that was a big question. They walked down the corridor and met two new maids, whom they had not yet met. They seemed very polite. Let's hope that it will continue like this. In fact, now Julia doesn't want to worry about anything anymore. Maybe because she was locked in the office. Or maybe because of Fernand's unpredictable behavior. Only one thing is clear. There is no place for her here. From this realization, everything around lost its meaning. No person would like to be in a place where he sees that no one is happy to see him. And even more so, where they are treated openly disrespectfully. Some time passed. The lady had already returned to her room, and while they were doing her hair, the assistant decided to ask what the lady had plans for today. She replied that she didn't even know what to answer. She would probably just read a book, to which the assistant said that then she could bring what she needed so that she wouldn't have to leave the room and waste time on it. Suddenly, another assistant comes in to say that the lady has a guest, although the girl was not expecting anyone. It was hard for her to even guess who it could be, so she didn't try to guess and simply asked Melissa to quickly get her in order. In the end, she didn't have to go down anywhere. The guest went up to her room, apologized for disturbing her, and then asked how she had been doing all this time. The guy says he only came in for a short while because the prayer period for Lady Veronica was over. Even though they are talking about some topic, it is clear that they are somehow embarrassed, as if they are not telling the whole story. Those confused looks are clearly saying something, But for now, they continue to pretend to communicate simply because they have free time to do so. She tells him that His Highness is not in the castle now, he has left on state business, and when he will return, she has no idea. After that, she offered to take him to the reception area because, probably, no one wants to stand in the middle of the corridor for an unknown amount of time. Here they are already sitting on the sofas, settled in. She tells him that she is very glad that they were finally able to meet, although she thought that it would not happen as quickly as it turned out. Suddenly, he says that Lady Julia's face at the event seemed very sad to him. It made him feel anxious. And he also mentioned that she looks like her late mother and then changed if he somehow offended her with this. Although he didn't mean to. She told him that everything is fine, but he still thinks that she is upset, although that is not the point. She's having such a terrible day overall that she doesn't have the strength to smile at anyone, even those she treats well. It's a bit strange, but suddenly he offers her to take his hand. Yulia has no idea why this is necessary, but still did not refuse. She just touched him, some light appeared, but she is still sure that he can be trusted. Immediately after that, her soul felt very light. Apparently he felt that she needed it now. And indeed, he managed to do much better. Then he reminded that he had already mentioned once that he had the power of healing. And he also has interesting information. It just so happens that she was the first one he saved with his ability many years ago. And on that day, God awakened in him a hidden divine power that he could not even dream of before. His first blessing as a priest was to wish that baby the well-being of everyone in the world. And then he asked her another question. Is she happy now? And Julia has no idea what to say to him about it. She couldn't answer him anything. And he says that if life didn't work out that way, then it's only his fault and no one else's. And after that, he started to take something out of his pocket and said that he wanted to give her somethings. This is a pendant that contains his divine power. But the girl was somehow not ready for this. He says that she is still a special person for him, and he wants to give him to her. And he also does not accept any excuses or refusals.